Rowe and Cotter argued that Utopian ideas failed because they tried to create a perfect, controlled city. They believed that modernist architects wanted to design an ideal world, but real cities do not work that way. Cities grow over time with different buildings, styles and histories mixed together. They think utopian plans ignore this reality and try to force a single vision onto a complex environment. Instead, they propose a college city where different architectural elements can coexist and evolve naturally. Tofuri, however, takes a different approach. He believes that utopian architecture was never truly about helping people or creating better cities. Instead, he sees it's a tool used by capitalism. He argues that modernist architects thought they were designing for the future, but in reality they were making cities more efficient for economic growth. According to Tofuri, architecture is always controlled by power and money, so it cannot bring real social change. He rejects the idea that architecture can escape capitalism influence. A good example of this debate is modernist housing projects like Pretty Eagle in the United States. These buildings were designed as a perfect solution for urban housing, but they failed because they did not fit the needs of the people living there. Rowe and Cotter all say they failed because they were too rigid and did not respect the natural complexity of cities. Tofuri, on the other hand, both argued that these projects were never really about helping people. They were part of a capitalist system that wanted cheap and efficient housing for the working class.
After the failure of utopian architecture, Rowe and Cotter suggest a different approach. Instead of trying to design a perfect city, they believe architects should work with what already exists. Their idea of the college city suggests that cities should be made of different layers, historical, modern, big, small, working together. They don't think a single master plan can shape an entire city, but they believe good architecture can create small, meaningful improvements. Tofuri, however, rejects this idea. He argues that no architectural solution can truly change society because architecture is always controlled by capitalism. Even if architects try to design something different, it will still be shaped by economic and political force. He believes the idea that architecture can fix social problems is an illusion. In his view, architects should accept that they cannot change the system and stop pretending that design can be a political act. Rome is a good example of a college city because it has ancient ruins, Renaissance palace, modern buildings, and contemporary designs all mixed together. Rowe and Cotter would see this as a successful way of organizing a city, where different styles and histories coexist. Tofuri, on the other hand, will argue that even a city like Rome is shaped by economic and political force, not by architectural ideas alone.
Rowe and Cotter criticize modernist architects for focusing too much on order and control. They believe that modernists wanted cities to be perfectly organized, but this made them boring and unnatural. In real cities, people live in a mix of different styles, functions, and activities. Modernist planning was a strict separation of work, living, and recreation areas ignores the way cities actually function. Rowe and Cotter think that obsession with order is unrealistic and even harmful to urban life. Tofuri, however, goes further. He argues that modernist order was not just a mistake, it was part of capitalism's logic. He believes that modernist architecture helped make cities more efficient for economic production, not for people's needs. By creating standardized buildings and functionalist designs, modernism served industrial capitalism. Instead of seeing modernist architecture as a revolutionary movement, Tofuri sees it as a tool that helped capitalism expand. Le Corbusier's Radiant City is a good example. It was designed to be a highly organized city with separate areas for work, housing, and leisure. Rowe and Cotter will argue that this kind of design ignores the complexity of real cities. Tofuri will say that this is not just a design mistake. This kind of planning made cities more controlled and easier to manage for economic purposes.
Rowe and Cotter's idea of chaos city is still relevant today. Many urban planners now focus on creating flexible, diverse cities instead of following a single vision. Their ideas support mixed-use development where homes, offices, and public spaces exist together. Their approach also challenges corporate-controlled cities, which often focus only on economic growth. Tougher is critical is also still important. Today, many cities promote sustainability and green architecture as a solution to environmental problems. However, Tafuri would argue that these ideas do not truly change anything because they will operate within capitalism. Even green buildings and smart cities are designed to make a profit, not to challenge economic power. He would say that sustainable design is just a new version of same system. Hudson Yards is a New York is a good example. In the modern eco-friendly development, but it was built for wealthy investors, not for general public. Rose and Cotters might see some positive aspects in this design, like how it's combined different spaces. However, Tafari would say it is just another way of capitalism to present itself progressive while still being about profit.
Rowe and Cotter believe that architecture can still make cities better. They do not think architects can change the whole system, but they believe that small, thoughtful designs can improve urban life. By accepting complexity and diversity, architects can create better public spaces, housing, and streets. Tarver would strongly disagree. He believes that architecture is too connected to capitalism. So any attempt at social change will still be controlled by economic forces. He argues that architects should stop believing they can fix society through design. Community-based urban projects where local people help design their neighborhoods are an example of Rowe and Cotter's ideas. They believe these projects can create real improvements. Tarfuri, however, would say these projects still exist within capitalism and cannot surely change anything.
Rao and Cotter say that a perfect city is impossible, but architects can still design better space by working with existing conditions. They support incremental change instead of large-scale utopian plans. Tafuri, on the other hand, thinks utopia in architecture is just a fantasy. He believes that architecture cannot escape capitalism, so any attempt to create an ideal city will only serve economic interests. He argues that instead of dreaming about utopias, architecture should recognize their limitations. For example, smart cities, which use technology to improve urban life, could be seen as a modern utopias. Rao and Kauter may say they have some good ideas but should be flexible and diverse. Tafuri would argue that smart cities are just another way for corporations to control urban life.
Rove and Kota believe that history is an important part of architecture and urban design. They argue that cities develop over time and their different layers of history should be preserved and integrated. Instead of erasing the past to create something entirely new, they suggest using historical fragments as a part of a college city. This means mixing old and new elements in a way that respects the past while allowing for change. Tafiri, however, has a more critical view of history in architecture. He believes that historical references are often used as ideological tools. He argues that when architects bring historical elements into their design, they often do so in a way that serves economic and political interests. For example, traditional architecture can be used to make a project seem more authentic or to attract investments. Tafiri doesn't see history as something natural or valuable in itself. It is always part of a large systems of power and capital. In cities like Paris, historic buildings are carefully preserved and new architecture is designed to fit alongside them. Rowe and Kota would see this as a positive example of a college city. Tafiri, however, would question whether this preservation is really about culture
or if it's just a way to increase property values and tourism revenue.
Rowe and Cotter believe imagination is essential for good architecture. They argue that cities should be designed with creativity and flexibility, not just strict rules and regulations. They criticize modernist urban planning for being too rigid and mathematical, leaving little room for unexpected or organic growth. They see the city as a space where different ideas and styles can come together in a creative way, like an artistic colleague. Tayfuri, however, is a spectacle of imagination in architecture. He believes that even the most creative designs cannot escape capitalism. He argues that imagination in architecture is often used as a way to make capitalism look more exciting and progressive. For example, a futuristic design may seem radical, but it still functions within the same economic system. Tayfuri believes architects should be aware of this and do not fool themselves into thinking that creativity alone can change society. Zaha Hadid futuristic buildings with their flowing organic forms could be seen as highly imaginative. Rowe and Cotter might appreciate their bold and artistic qualities, seeing them as part of a diverse architectural landscape.